All right, so we have a lot to cover today, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks for everybody for joining today's webinar, Geopointe Customization for Admins, where we're going to be covering some of the many customizable features that Geopointe offers, really to help the end user and businesses tailor Geopointe for your unique needs. So this is the second webinar in a four-part Geopointe admin series that we put together to help our admins with the setup process and customization process. So if you missed the first webinar covering the setup and installation, we'll let you know where you can find that, as well as register for the next two webinars coming up here next month in October. So stay tuned. We'll make sure we share that with you before the webinar is over. My name's Julie Dunn. I'm on our marketing team here at Geopointe, and I'll be helping out with today's presentation. Just to the regular housekeeping items that we normally cover, everybody's lines are muted, but we do want to encourage you to ask questions as they might come to you. So use that questions panel in GoToWebinar control panel on the right of your screen there. Enter questions as they come. We'll be leaving some dedicated time for Q&A at the end of the session. And then, of course, we always record our webinars and post them on our website. So always make sure you can check back for the recording, but you will receive an email with the recording and the slide deck. Likely later today, but definitely within the next 24 hours or so. It'll come from webinars@geopointe.com, so just make sure to check your spam and junk folder. Sometimes it ends up in there. So before we get started, I'm going to introduce our presenter for today, Ashley Crosby. She is our technical support manager here at Geopointe, one of our first employees. So she's really an expert on customizing Geopointe and just the perfect person to help you out today. You might have even talked to her before. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it to Ashley to go ahead and get us started.
Thanks, Julie. Hello, everybody. I am really excited to do this webinar today. It's a little bit different than ones we've done in the past. We've done admin ones before, and we've done some customization ones before that included some code and stuff. But we wanted this one to be geared to you admins who maybe don't have development resources, so you can see what you can do without Apex, without Visualforce, and still customize the map and make it work for you. So, quick overview of our agenda today. We will do a brief overview of what was covered before. So if you did miss Geopointe install and setup for admins, you'll at least get a taste of what's there so you know if it's something you want to go back and watch. Then we're going to do some custom object setup. We didn't really cover it in the last one, so wanted to take some time to go over just the slight differences. And then we're also going to cover the fields you need to create to do that, as well as show you what you can do to create those buttons. Then we're going to switch to more of a use case and come up with a strategy for this use case. And while we are doing that, we will go over making some custom buttons using URL parameters, and we will also touch on some of our more basic Geopointe actions. So I hope this is going to be informational, and here we go. I'm going to be dropping some of our terms that we use internally regularly. So if you're not familiar with all of these terms, just be aware these are going to be dropped. Map objects are how we say your Salesforce data is allowed on the map. Geocoding is the process of latitudes, longitudes, and getting those onto your records. Data sets are the queries that you perform on the map to actually show your data. And then this all happens either on the map tab or on the Geopointe setup tab. So I'm going to be using those terms a lot today. So that's just be aware of that if you're not super familiar with them. So we'll cover what we went over last time. First, we started with basic setup. This is going to be the information you get out of the post-installation instructions when that email goes out to you when you first install. That covers your basic setup, getting batch jobs up and running to make sure your data stays up to date, getting your standard buttons in place, and getting your user set up. We also covered some of the data set options. So that is your filters, your fields, your markers. We covered a lot of that in the last webinar. Then we switched to talking about some of our other layers. Folders, as far as getting them organized and sharing rules to make sure that people are only seeing what they need to see on the map, as well as some of our other layer types, such as shapes and other customizations like map styles. So if you do want to go back and rewatch that, you can whenever you want. It's available on our main Geopointe website, and we've also left the breadcrumbs to the webinar section there for you, so you can find it easily. Whoops, skipped it. Okay, so first we're going to start with our custom object setup. Just a quick brief overview again of what the map objects do. They are how you define your Salesforce objects for mapping. So it's not that different for custom objects from the standard objects. Standard objects, we're able to package some fields for you and have those ready to go. We can't do that with custom objects because we aren't going to know what custom objects you have in order to even do that. But it's just important to note that they're still very versatile. As long as a custom object has an address on it, or it has access to an address via a lookup field, it can be mapped in Geopointe. And you can use any of the setup options. We talked in detail last time about on-record geocoding, off-record geocoding, or referencing, using a referencing map object as your map object types. Any of the three work for your custom objects. It just depends on what matters to you for storage space and where the address information is stored. And again, the setup is almost identical. We just have to create the fields because they aren't there automatically. The other thing we're going to go over is the button creation. So for standard objects, we package buttons you can put on your Salesforce records or on your list views that allows you to go out to the map directly from there without having to click to the map tab. So we'll also go through creating the map button, which takes you to the map centered on that particular location. And that's for record pages. And we'll also go over the map records button, which goes on your list views. Then you can select a few records and see those on the map. Currently, the map records button only works for custom objects in Classic. It's not quite ready for Lightning yet, but we'll still cover that. So with that, let's jump into our demo. So to demonstrate this today, I have a custom object here for resorts. Here we go. So I want to see these resorts on the map. So to do that, we need to get it set up and ready to go. If I try to just go to Geopointe setup right now and start trying to map this, I'm going to get an error message. So if I click on map objects and I click new map object, find my resort in here. I scroll down here, I'm going to see this yellow error message. Whether I'm choosing off, on record, off record, if I don't have the fields there, it's not going to work. For off record, it's recognizing, hey, I haven't found the lookup field, I can't do anything. And it gives you the setup instructions. We're going to go over those right now. So what I want to do, I want to be in Salesforce setup, and I'm currently in Lightning and using the object manager. If you're in Classic, this is going to be under Create Objects and find your object from there. So right now I am already on my resort object and I need to create a new field. So I'm going to go ahead, click the new button. And what we are creating here to do off-record geocoding is a lookup field. And what we are doing is the lookup field is going to be to our geocode object, which then says you can write the latitude, longitude data to it after we create the map object. So I am going to find Geopointe geocode, click next, and I'm just going to call it geocode like that. And no other changes need to be made. Click next. Field level security, you can usually just leave at the defaults and click next. And page layout, you can choose whether you want it on the page layout or not. Those of you on group or professional edition, it needs to be there. If you are using enterprise or unlimited, it can be hidden, so you don't have to put it on the page layout. I'm going to choose to not put it there. And then with the related lists, you don't need the related lists, so you can make sure those are both unchecked and save. Okay, so now I have my geocode field right there. And we're ready to go back and actually create the map object. So let me cancel out of this and do it again. Scroll down, find my resort object, and you'll notice no angry error message this time. And it automatically filled it in, found the lookup field, and filled it in there for us. So now what we need to do is actually define the addresses. When you're doing this with a standard object, it's probably going to predefine these for you. We built that in for you. Again, custom object, we're not going to know where those fields are. So all I need to do is click change and find my street. And this is a pretty simple object, so there aren't a whole lot of fields here to search through. So you can see you can click through these pretty quickly to get them loaded up there. Okay, and that's it. I am ready to save. Okay, so you'll see we now have our map object for resorts down here, and it's already launched a batch job to get those geocoding for us. So now let's talk about our custom buttons so that we can actually be on the resort records and come to the map. So I'm going to start again back here in the object manager. And this time we are going to go down to the buttons, links, and actions. And we are going to create a new button or link. So for this, I'm just going to go very simple. I'm just going to call it map. And because I like the display better in Classic in particular, I'm going to choose the detail page button. And all the rest of this can stay the same. For Classic users, I'll go over the difference in behaviors. For you Lightning users, it actually doesn't matter which of these you choose. It's going to behave the same way regardless, typically. But for Classic, I would recommend leaving it at display in new window, and then I'll show you what else to do after we're done. The content source is a URL. So to create this button, and you can find this in the links on the presentation to get to this code later, so don't feel like you have to be memorizing this code right now. But what we've got here is just a quick little URL. This first section is just telling it to go to our map page. The rest of this is a URL parameter, which we are going to get into in more detail in a little bit. And what this is saying is take me to the map centered on the record I'm currently looking at. Right now, this one is just a placeholder. So I'm going to take that out of there, and I'm going to replace it with the merge field for the record ID. So there it is. So it's going to go to the map, and it's going to be centered on the resort I'm currently looking at. And that's it. That's all you need to do for the map button. Give the syntax a quick check. Looks good. And save. Okay, Classic users, if you did keep it at display in a new window, and you are like me and you use Chrome and you would rather it be opening in a new tab, what you can do is you can edit window open properties. And what you want to do is get rid of the height and check all of these boxes. So that means it'll, the behavior will be open in a new tab versus open in a new window. If you like it opening in a new window, then you can leave it as is. And again, for us in Lightning, I'll show you how it behaves in a minute. This is not going to affect how it opens in Lightning. It's always going to open in the same window. So now if I go to one of my resorts here, oh, I suppose I should put it on the page layout first. So, all right, back in setup, I want to go to our page layouts. And I'm going to edit my resort layout here. Okay, 2 locations dependent on which version you're using. For Classic, you are going to look for it in the buttons, and where you are going to put it is right here under the custom buttons. For Lightning users, it is what you actually are going to want to look for is the Salesforce 1 and Lightning actions, and the map is also here. And you are going to override the predefined actions if that error message is showing up for, or not error message, that message is showing up for you. And I'm going to stick it in here next to new task. Okay, so that's the difference. This is where you put it for Lightning. This is where you put it for Classic. All right, and save. So now if I come here and I open one of my resorts, you will notice that I now have maps sitting up here. And I can click on that. And it's going to load the map for me on that location right there. Okay, so that's how the map button works. Now I'm going to switch to Classic for a second here. And whoops, that is not what I wanted it to do. Try that again. Not be so click happy. And switch to Salesforce Classic. Okay, so for this I'm going to go back to setup. And I'm going to get in here to create objects, find my resort. Okay, so we are going to create another button. And this time we're going to do the list action button. So I'm going to go ahead and call it map records. And this time it is a list button. And we do want it to display checkboxes. Behavior is going to be execute JavaScript. And then the content source is on click JavaScript. So this code is kind of scary looking, but nothing to be alarmed by because you only have to make one minor change. So here it is. It's doing all of its JavaScript fun to make it display and allow you to select them from the list. You don't have to worry about any of this except right here where we've got this object name placeholder. And you want to replace that with the API name of this object, which is resort __c. And that's it. That's all you have to do. So I will go ahead and click save. And now we want to put that on a list view. So I come down here to my search layouts, find my list view. And under custom buttons, I've got the map records button right there. And I can just click add to move it over, save. And now if I go to my resorts here and I pull up a list view, I've got my map records button there. I can come in here and just select a handful of these, click map records. And it takes us to the map with those already displayed. And again, you can use the map records in Lightning on standard objects. We just do not have the ability to do it for custom objects. So for now, this is only a classic feature. Okay. So moving on. Now we're going to move into strategy with a particular use case. So to demonstrate this, I have come up with Sunnyside Disaster Relief. They are a nonprofit that are looking, for a solution to target people and other fellow nonprofits in need. And so here are some of the things that they want to be able to do on the map. First, they want to target accounts to call. Then they want to plan some follow-ups and decide how they want to follow up with those individuals based on their call experience with them. They also want to be able to find new contacts and create new contacts directly from the map, and so they don't have to keep switching back and forth between lots of Salesforce screens. And then they also want to identify people who need care packages and get them added to a campaign. So they could do all of this with Geopointe out of the box, but there are things that can be done to just make the experience easier for their end users and just to make the experience faster for them. So here's our first use case. We have a small campaign that we think needs expansion. We think the map is the best way to do that. What is the easiest way to visualize the campaign? So my thinking on this particular question is it would be great to start by seeing all of these campaign members on the map and then expand the campaign after you've already got them there and they're visible. So first, to expand the campaign, they're going to want to use our standard list action for adding to campaign. That's a given. But we can also use our URL parameters to allow them to come directly from a campaign and automatically map all of those campaign members. And so that just eliminates a big step for their marketing team. So let's talk about URL parameters for a second. So what are they? A parameter is what gets added to the end of a URL, and it affects the behavior of the page when it loads. So typically these are going to be placed on record pages as either custom links or buttons. Just to kind of give you an overview of what's in the way, I guess I better not move my mouse. So we've got an example down here at the bottom of what the URL parameters look like attached to a URL. That first part should look fairly familiar to most of you. That's just standard Salesforce type of a URL. And then it's, what it's doing is it's saying, okay, go to the map page. Everything after that question mark is a different parameter. So a question mark marks the beginning of the first parameter, and then ampersands mark every parameter after that. So in the case of this example, it's saying go to the map, centered around this particular record ID, and then I want you to run a radial search on a particular data set out 100 miles. That is what those parameters are doing. So let's break that down a little bit more. Or actually, let's go over uses first, and then we'll break it down. Here's some of the things you can do. First, the map button for custom objects uses this method. We just created that. It's a very simple URL parameter, but it falls under this category. You can do customized map buttons that just simplify the process, including auto searches, pushing extra filters across, all that kind of fun stuff. And that's where merge fields come in, especially with the filters, and allowing you to push stuff over that is particular to that one record without having to hard code it. It can also speed up the processes, especially if you're doing auto searches. If your team has one search that they're always going to do, and it just changes dependent on their location or the location of the record, this is a really great use case for that. You can also use it for lookup relationships. We won't cover that today in particular, but you can use the map as the go-between to choose a record to put into a lookup field. So I wanted to break this down. The link I had a couple slides ago about URL parameters goes over each one of these in full detail. But here is what it would look like to run an auto search. So the first part is just the simple part of the URL saying, take me to the map. After that, our first parameter here is centered on this account. And then the rest of it is performing an auto search. So it's pulling in a dataset ID, and I will show you where to find that in just a moment. And then this is setting it up for a nearby search. So I want it to auto run a radial search, and I want it to be out a range of 25, and the units is miles. So that's what each one of these are doing. The one we're actually going to do is going to be one using filters with an auto search. So what we're going to implement is we're going to be on a campaign, and we want it to filter by the campaign on a campaign members data set. So, this is what this can look like as an example. It's go to the map, and I want you to do this on this particular data set. And then the rest of these are filter parameters. So for a filter parameter, it requires 3 parts. The first one is the field. So that's the type here. The next one is the operator. So in this case, it's equals. And the last one is the value, what you want to put in there. You can hard code that to be a specific value using text, but you could also use a merge field here. And then this last part is running an entire data set search. So what this is doing is it's saying, go to the map, and then on this data set, I want you to add a filter that the type equals the same type as the account I'm coming from, and then run a search on that. So that's what it's doing, and let's show you how it works. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and switch back to Lightning. Okay, so I'm going to start in our object manager here. And in this tab, I'm also going to get the map up and running. So I want the search to happen on campaign members, but I actually want the button to be on the campaign. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the campaign. And again, I'm going to click into buttons, links, and actions and do new button or link. Okay, I'm going to call this one in particular, let's call it map members. And I'm going to set this one up again to be a detail page button. And then remember that the display information and all that kind of stuff is important to Classic, but doesn't matter in Lightning. So let me pull in each part of this button here one step at a time. So the very first part is just making sure that it's coming to the map. So this is, it's saying, okay, this is going into Apex, and it's taking us to the Geopointe map page. That's that first part. So the next part that we want is the data set. So for the parameter, I like to do this on separate lines. It helps me keep it better organized, but you could, of course, just build these on one line, just make sure there's no spaces anywhere. So first parameter is going to be a question mark, and this one's going to be dataset equals. To get our ID for the dataset, you want to be on the map, and you want to find the correct dataset. So I'm going to come in here, find the campaign member all, which is the one I want to work with. I'm going to edit it and go all the way to the other button. Here down at the very bottom is the ID. So that's what I care about right there. Come on. There we go. We're going to paste that in there. And now we get to build out our filters. So first, we're going to do this. And you'll notice that we had on our example ones at the end of each of those, that just means you can add different filters. So if I was doing more than one filter, the next filter would start with FF2, would be how that goes. So first I want to do my filter field. That is going to be on the campaign ID. If you're not sure exactly which field to use, I will sometimes cheat and use the map. So what I want to do is actually build a filter here that's filtering to the campaign, and I want it to be on the ID field. So this is actually the name of the field I'm looking for, using that API name. So that goes there. And then our operator is going to be equal. And then our value is going to be a merge field of this campaign's ID. So if I come in here, insert field, there's the campaign ID right there. And I'm going to insert that just like that. And then finally, I want it to run an entire dataset search. And set that to true. And that's it. Check the syntax, it looks good. So just as a quick recap, go to the map. On this data set, add a filter to the campaign equals the campaign I'm currently on, and run that data set. So if I go ahead and save it, and now I want to go to the page layout, edit it. Okay, I'm going to go to the Salesforce 1 and Lightning Actions. There's my map members, and just drag it in there. And again, for you classic users, it goes from the buttons and it goes here into custom buttons. Save. So now if I go to a campaign, so here's my all current relief contacts campaign. You'll notice I now have map members up here. And so assuming I did the button correctly, clicking it is going to load up the Geopointe map for us. And once we got here, it started to automatically do a search. And there are the 18 members of that campaign that we just clicked from. Okay, so that is how it works using parameters to help speed up some of this process. Okay, next, here's our next use case. We would like to customize the new task button with custom text. And what they actually want are two. One, that if a client was reached, and one if they were not. So for this, we're going to go over our actions framework a little bit. This is one of those places where there is a whole lot that your development team could do, or an outside developer could do. But I want to focus on our first two action options here. So first, the Geopointe Action Framework allows you to extend the application to better fit your business logic. The URL actions look a whole lot like what we just did with URL parameters. It's sending information that is on the map to another page and letting you work on it from there. Create record actions allows you to create brand new Salesforce records directly from the map. And so we'll also go over what that looks like. The ones that we won't be covering are Apex actions and Visualforce actions, which allows you to either invoke Apex or launch up your own custom Visualforce page directly from the map. So let's go over those custom tasks. All right, so if I go to Geopointe Setup, I want to go to the Actions page. And so the use case is specifically for new tasks. You could also do this for logging a call if you wanted to. The two here are very identical. There's not a whole lot of difference between the two. But in this case, they want these to be created to then be open tasks to be acted upon later. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and clone new task. And this is what it looks like. It's a URL action. And we've got some URL parameters happening here again. And what it's doing is the first part is saying, take us to a new, the page to create a new task. That's what this first part is. The rest of it is information that you want to automatically put into that task when you get there. So the who is going to implement whoever, or going to put in whoever clicked on the button. The what is going to put in whatever record you clicked from. And then if you're opening it in the correct way, this part just brings you back to that, that stuff. What I want to do is actually add a couple of extra ones here onto the end. So for this first button, we are going to do, okay, we touched base with the person and they have requested help. So I'm going to name this button Help Requested. And I want to add some additional information just to help make it easier for my team. So for example, for this one, I'm going to add in this information. So these are, kind of foreign here. Task 5 is actually just the subject, and task 6 is notes. So that's what those two mean. You can search for that information on the internet to see what each one of those mean in Salesforce terms. So that's what I want to do for those. The other thing I want to do is set this up so that it only shows up for accounts, because they're always going to be calling a particular account when this is needed. So I'm going to go ahead and only make it available there. The last thing I want to change, currently the display type is link, and I would rather it be a button. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and save. Okay, so now I've got my help requested. Now I want to create another one for if I was unable to reach them. So I'm going to go ahead and actually just clone help requested here. And this one I'm going to call could not reach. And for these parameters, I'm going to add the exact same parameters, just with a little bit different text. So here, we're going to do that. So now the subject is going to start with could not reach, and then the notes are just going to be organization was not reachable by phone. So that's all I'm going to do. Otherwise, it's already a button, and again, I only want this on accounts. So with that, I can go ahead and save. So what this is going to look like on the map, let me refresh it here. I'll show you part of what they're working with here. So we've got a folder here in particular for Hurricane Harvey. If I add everything in this folder to the map, what we've got here is first a KML that is showing the path of Harvey, which is loading up fairly slowly. Here we go. There we go. So just a KML that showed the path the hurricane took when it made, to landfall, and then when it finally dissipated. And then I've also got these two shapes in here showing the areas of Texas and Louisiana that were most hit. So if I zoom in here, we can see the path that the hurricane took, as well as these two shapes created that are showing the counties in particular that got hit the worst, and then the almost as bad. So what we're trying, so what they're trying to figure out is people who still need help within the disaster zone. So if I run a search here on map view, and I'm going to do all of our nonprofit accounts for this. So you can see all of these search results of different nonprofits that are in the area who may still need assistance. So if they're sitting here on their, at their desk trying to figure out who still needs assistance, they can come in here, click on this one who's, almost at the edge of the worst of the, worst zone. And now they've got two new task options here. And so if they called them, got the phone number here, and they were able to reach them, and they've requested help, they can click here, and it's going to open a new page for us. And it did not bring it over. It must only work in Classic. I was only testing in Classic. How about we show you off? How about we show it in Classic? Okay, we will load up our high risk and our critical. There we go. Well, while that finishes, we'll get our nonprofits back on there. Okay, not sure why that shape is taking so long to load, but we know it's coming. Again, if we clicked on this and we clicked helps requested, now you'll see it actually pre-inserted this stuff. So supplies needed, you could then add in here that maybe they need some canned food, and have that be ready to go as a new task, and it can be worked on later that day. So that's how that can work, and you can see how the display looks there for that. Okay. Last use case is we would like to allow our users to create new contacts from the map, but we need to know the map was the source. Makes sense. If they're creating a lot of new records, it'd be nice to know where those are, but you also don't want that to be something that your end users are in charge of. You want that to automatically be there for them. So what we're going to go over is the create record action. And so let's dive into that. So to do a create record action, the very first step you need to do is to create a field set. So since I'm already in Classic, I'll just stay here. And so I'm going to do this on contacts because that's what we want to create. So if you come in here, customize contacts, field sets, you're going to create a new field set. So what you're defining here with this field set is what fields are going to be visible to your end users when they actually create this new contact. Okay. So it looks like an extremely simple page layout. In this case, what we want in particular is their name. You'll notice there are lots of name fields here. It's hard to tell which is which, but one is first name, one is last name, one is salutation, and one is suffix. So we want to make sure those are there. Let's see, let's also make the account name visible. And let's also allow them to enter a phone number. And if they happen to get it, an email address. Oops. Okay, So that's what we want them to be able to fill out. I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And now if I go back to Geopointe Setup, and back to the actions, I'm going to create a new action. So I'm going to call this Create New Contact. Want it available for the web. These also work for Salesforce 1. And I actually only want, oh, let's see, let's actually do this part first. So we're going to apply this to a point. We want this to happen on actual records themselves. So we're calling an account and we're discovering a new person at that particular location. The display type I want to be a button. And the action type is going to be create record. And then you can choose where this is actually displayed. So you can create a record from just doing a right click on the map, from a places search, from a record, or from a route stop. In this case, I actually only want it available for records. And then I can choose whether I want it to be available for all records to just, no matter what record I clicked on, I can create a new contact from it, or I can be more selective. And in this case, I actually only want them doing it on accounts. So now I choose which object I want. So I want them to create a contact. And now we get into the field mapping. This first part was looking for the field set and it pre-populated it for us. All these other field mappings are just to, if you want to fill in information that is coming directly from the map. So obviously you're probably going to want to fill in the address information because you're going to have that from the map. If you're doing a places search, we get other information from Google, like the phone number, the website. You can get that automatically populated. But because I'm doing a record action here, name's not going to automatically be filled in, but we do want our street to be filled in. So we're going to select those here. So I'm selecting the mailing address information. All right, I don't have any custom lat long fields, so I can skip those, but I do want it to automatically populate the account in there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for the account ID. And finally, I do want that default value so that we know that this is coming from Geopointe as the source of this contact. So what I can do is I can add a default value here and select the field. So in this case, it's lead source. And under record action, I am just going to choose Geopointe, which is one of my pick list options. And go ahead and save. Okay, so now if I go back to the map, and if we pull up our nonprofit accounts again, whoops, do an everywhere search. There they are. And if I click on one of these, I now have my create new contact sitting here. So when I click it, you can now see all the fields that we pulled in on the field set. And the name fields are in a bit of a weird order there. But, still still works. You'll notice because I clicked from an account, it automatically filled in the account ID for us. So it's going to automatically attach them to that particular account for me. And then if I did know their phone and email, I could also fill those in and I can save. And that's it. If I click on John Doe here and go out, you'll see this is now created a Salesforce record and it automatically filled in the account name like we expected it to. The lead source did default to Geopointe, just like I asked it to on the create record action. And then it automatically, even though we didn't see this information on the create record action, it automatically filled in the mailing address for us. So that is how that works. Okay, So that is everything for this webinar. This is, again, part 2 of this particular webinar series. On demand, you can go back and watch the Install the Basics webinar that is available to you. The next upcoming ones, the next one is on October 10th, and for that one we are going to cover in depth our assignment plans. So that's assigning and automating your Salesforce territories with Geopointe. And then the next one after that, we're going to go over the ability to import business and people data via Zoom info from Geopointe's maps. So going to the next level with Geopointe's business and people layer is going to be all about getting that set up and ready to go in your system. And so we've got our registration link down there at the bottom. And again, don't feel like you need to memorize that link. You'll get this slide deck when you get the recording of this webinar. And just some quick information. We're always trying to improve Geopointe. And so our release schedule, we're actually doing about 3 to 4 major releases a year plus patches as needed in between there. So, for those of you who aren't super familiar with the process, you get a good month or so when we do one of those large releases. You'll get emails, you'll get blog, we'll do announcements on our blog as well as get the release notes up. And then sandboxes get upgraded first before it goes on the App Exchange. And it's on the App Exchange for a little while when we do the release webinar, and then when we finally actually push it to production. So you do have quite a bit of time in there to get used to our new changes. So expect to see some fun stuff coming later this fall from us. And Julie, I will hand it over to you if we've got questions.
Thanks, Ashley. We did get a couple questions that came in, but in the meantime, if you have anything else that comes up, use the questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel. Enter any questions you might have, and we'll get to as many as we can here. We did get some questions about the recording, so just final reminder to everybody, yes, you will receive the recording. We do send the slide deck with the recording too, but it does come from geopointe@webinars.com. So just check spam folders and junk folders because oftentimes those things end up in there. But let's go on to our questions. How do we find a cheat sheet for the URL parameter options?
For the Geopointe ones, those are on our website. I'll actually show you that link here very fast so you can find it. If you go to help.geopointe.com, it is listed under our customization options below, but if you do a quick search up here for URL parameters, it's going to be your first hit. So what we've got here is a list of just the basic parameters, the ones for mapping lists, and then also ours that are specific to searching, filters, and if you did want to use the map as a lookup, all of those options are here as well. So here's your cheat sheet, URL parameters at help.geopointe.com.
Perfect. Thanks, David. Hopefully that helped. And then also similar to that question, where's a good place to find like a definition of Geopointe terms?
That is a great question. I believe we do have a glossary here on the support site. I would also recommend watching some of our intro videos and reading through the post-install steps. That will also just help familiarize yourself with that. But I do believe we have a glossary here.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yep. Geopointe terms and functions. I couldn't remember exactly what we called it, but yes, so there is a list in here of that information.
Perfect. And what about a roadmap of upcoming functionality?
We don't have an exposed roadmap, but as soon as we've got the next release ready to go, those release notes will be here on the website. And again, you'll have a good month or so of lead out time for that. So it's actually down here, the very bottom section. And so don't have a full roadmap, but you can at least see what all goes into a release. So you can, these are pretty thorough with lots of screen caps and even some how-to steps. So they're pretty thorough release notes when we get to that point.
Yes, a little premature, but before Dreamforce, so within the next month or so, we will be announcing a new add-on feature. So we're really excited about that. But contact your account executive or use the contact us form on the Geopointe website if you are interested in talking about a particular functionality that you might need. The idea site is great for that as well. All right, those were all the questions that we had. So just a reminder again, I'll send out the slide deck and the recording. And just a special thank you for everybody for joining us today. Make sure that you take a look at the next two webinars in the upcoming series that we'll be doing next month. And we hope to see you there. Thanks again, everyone.